Everyone, I wanted to do a video today and I wanted to do it on a specific subject. Now, the video I'm going to do today will be in two parts because the subject itself there's quite a lot of information that I've gathered. And today I wanted to talk about sea witchery, working witchcraft by the sea, and some of the stuff that it entails, and some of the history and some of the folklore. Now, just to start off with, it's always remembered that places where land, sea and sky met were regarded as sacred places, were regarded as places between the physical world and the spiritual world. They were crossholds, they were thresholds in which these spirits could pass, and of course sometimes even people. Now, there's a charm in Orkney that involves the novice witch. It's an initiation charm, and it involves the novice witch basically laying down, by the point, the beach, the sand and the water, and having the waves come in and out, washing things around, going in and out around them. And they would have 7 stones around them. And so after this specific charm is spoken, then the witch would take up each rock and scream out, "Take me," with each throw. And that's another way, that's another example. In particular in Scotland, witchcraft, sea witchery actually does play quite a big part, and I'll talk about that in a minute. Now, there's, not just Scotland, we also have the idea of the Boscastle witches selling the wind, that famous picture on the Museum of Witchcraft, that's also, you get pictures of fridge magnets of it. And of course, it's not just in Cornwall and Scotland, but also Finland. There's also documents of it in, more sort of northern countries. More sort of countries within the Northern Hemisphere. Around Scotland as well, there are, tales of people, especially, as I said, in Orkney, there are tales of people doing sea witchery. Now, there's the idea of the witches selling the wind, which is the popular image as I was talking about before at Boscastle. And with this image, there is 3 knots made in a length of rope, and these would be given to the sailors before they went out to sea. And the first knot undone would cause a light breeze, and the second knot would cause a strong wind, and the third knot would cause a hurricane or a storm. So yeah, this will be a little bit scattered, by the way, this video. Sea witches will work with the ebb and flow of the sea and the tide. So of course, if the sea's coming in, then we could use that for something, something involving bringing stuff into your life. You could use that for bringing things in. If the sea's going away, of course we can use that to banish anything that we don't want anymore in our lives. This could be addictions or anything like that, people. Sea witches also tend to work with the moon and the lunar virtues and the various currents of the moon, because obviously the moon plays a big part in the seas and the tides. Cecil Williamson actually spoke of his famous ritual called drawing down the moon, in which you would sort of look up at the moon's reflection, then you would look down into the water and trace the stream of light going from the moon to the water, and then you would see the moon in a vision, and it would come to you, and of course that's where the witch will gain visions. Now, there's also connections with weather magic here as well. Sea witchery tends to be tied in with weather magic, with the idea of controlling weather magic as well. And I think, as with all witchcraft, weather magic does play a part. So of course we've got storm raising, of course there's, raising up storms, and this can be done in various different ways. Raising the winds, raising the tides. So there was a time when I was in Kent, and I was a lot younger, and I used to go to, I was seeing somebody, and I used to go to the beach, and they lived literally opposite the beach, and we done a couple of beach rituals there. But there was a time where me, the guy I was seeing at the time, and my friend who I actually know now and I'm quite well good friends with her, we would sit there and we were pulling in the tides, we were drawing in the tides, making the waves higher and higher and higher. And what you do is, it was almost, you know, you imagine that you have web, you know, just strands like webs, and you're pulling in the tide. So of course, you know, we had our, you know, it depends. I had a friend that was even doing that. It looked very weird. It kind of looked a bit Spider-Man, but like Spider Witch, you know. But you know, it depends. Various people, I was just sort of, you know, like that in the sea. But it's interesting working sea magic, in particular with raising storms and raising winds, because it really is immediate. The results and the effects that you see, obviously, are like, you know, boom, they're very, very, very immediate. And of course, raising the wind, not only were sailors given by sea witches raising the wind, but they were also given, you know, they were told how to whistle up the wind. And this is something that I do as well, and you know, loads of people can do. Loads of people can whistle up the wind. But it was warned against a sailor or, you know, a man at sea, that if he was to whistle up the wind for no apparent reason, then something terrible would happen to him. Of course, you know, there's also rain as well, you know, rain magic. So there is so many different ways we can do this. To cause rain, you know, there is a seal within the seal of Solomon that is, I think it's the seal of the moon, I'm not sure. But, you know, if it's immersed in water, whenever it's placed in water, rain will fall. You know, there's also having a broomstick and actually sprinkling from a basin of water, flicking the broom up with the water in it into the skies. Somebody, you know, there's also a flint, and throwing the flint behind you from the left shoulder. Loads of different things. Storm raising, you know, sea witches tend to use the storms to charge up their tools. A lot of sea witches will use that to work, you know, if they're to charge up their tools, they will just leave them out in the storm to charge. And if, you know, it's always a good idea to leave your tools to charge up in the storm. You know, yeah. Sorry, brain fart. So yeah, of course, how does one person create a storm? Well, there is loads and loads of different ways to do it. There's one way in which, you know, you have a basin of rain, basin of rainwater. It can be seawater. Obviously, you know, obviously if you're at the sea, go with the seawater. And of course, you're rubbing you're rubbing your hands, you're swishing the waves around, but you're not letting it go with the current. So you're pushing it, but you're actually pushing it the other way, and you're disrupting the water on purpose. There will be screaming into it, there will be shrieking. With storm witchery, making a storm, you have to conjure forth this bottomless pit of rage. That's the only way I can describe it. It's like you conjure forth this rage. It takes a lot of effort and a lot of energy. So yeah, there's loads of different ways to do weather magic. Isabel Galdey was told, you know, said that they had a rag soaked in water and a beetle, and they beat the rag on the stone in the devil's name. And, you know, some people say, you know, as long as it's dry, you know, that it will always rain. No, not rain. It will always be windy until the rag dries. So, what would a sea witch use? What are the tools in which, you know, what does a sea witch use to work with the tides? There are a lot of things sea witches use. Just like traditional witchcraft, everybody's different, you know. Sea witches tend to utilise what's around them. So, for instance, if there's driftwood or anything like that, they can work with driftwood. You know, for instance, we was just talking about raising a storm. If you find a piece of shipwreck, you can grind that to a powder and add that to that basin of seawater. You know, a wrecked ship can be great for cursing people. It can be great for raising storms, causing, you know, violent tides, stuff like that. So yeah, for instance, if you find a piece of driftwood, you can use that as a wand, or you can use that as a staff. It entirely depends. We have the knife. So a knife will be used within sea witchery. Normally, you know, pretty knives tend to be avoided because the sea salt can corrode them, especially as it's rife in the air with the winds. But, you know, knives will be used for weather magic, be used for sea magic as well, and can be used for causing rain. So, yeah, a knife is a great thing to have. Not just that, but a practical use as well, cutting various things, stuff like that. There is also another tool that sea witches can sometimes use, which is a pricking tool, which is an antler. Normally it's a tie and antler, but with the pricking tool, it was used to prick the winds. It was used to prick the winds, and it's also used, again, much like the knife, to cast sea witchery. These tend to be a lot more effective when working sea magic. That's what I've found personally. You know, it's everybody's choice what tool they use or work with. But yes, so the pricking tool is a very good historical tool that sea witches used. Witch balls. These glass floating balls were used ages ago. Unfortunately now we don't really tend to see them, and people tend to sell them as antiques. You can get these at any homeware store. I doubt this ball has ever been in the sea. But, you know, you can use these for merely just hanging up by the window. You can use them so that they will trap any bad spirits, or they will trap any bad, you know, malevolent spells. And as the sun rises, they diminish, it traps them. So yeah, not only that, it can actually be cut open, and you can actually work with the ball. You can use the ball in water and mugwort, or water and wormwood, or any, you know, water and heather, water and vervain, any plant associated with divination and spirit work. Traditionally it's mugwort. And you will scry into that, and a sea witch can use that to scry. Mirrors as well. I know of some sea witches that have used mirrors within their practice. In the Witch's Mirror, Lavanna Morgan, she talks about holding a mirror facing backwards, you know, facing the sea, having you back to the sea, and holding a mirror and staring at the reflection, and there you can see the sea spirits and commune with them. So that could be a good way. God, I ramble on, I do apologise. Sea salt. Now this is the interesting thing. This is a really interesting thing that I find a lot of people tend to get confused, because I consider myself quite old school in the way in which I'm old craft, I'm old school, and that's what I do. I take from old historical texts in regards to spirits, in regards to witches, and you know, that's just kind of my style. But I have always been told that spirits of the land cannot stand anything that comes from the sea. And so, of course, you wouldn't work with the Fae of the earth during a sea ritual, because they can't stand it and you wouldn't have much luck. But if you was to work with the sea spirits, the spirits of the winds, and the spirits that resided in that beach, you know, you'd have a bit of luck. Morley, you know, it tends to be the spirits of the wind and the sea. I haven't actually known of people to work with the spirits of the beach, but I'm sure there are people out there that have done it, and, you know, but they are going to be a lot different from land spirits, and we'll talk about this soon. Now, sea salt can be used for purification, can be used to mark out circles as well in the sand, stuff like that. And of course it's a product of the sea. And it can be used for witch bottles, sea witch bottles, sea charms, loads and loads of different stuff. There is also a child's membrane, which is like a cap, like a child's. Sometimes a membrane can be on the face of the child, and sailors often use that to stop themselves from drowning, and that was sort of hung up on the ship. Very lovely. Part 2.